Excuse us.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Sorry.
Move it, asshole.
Oh, thank God. We got good seats.
Damn right we did. What's up? We got the drinks.
We got the popcorn.
And the candy.
I think we're ready, man.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. The bathroom here is nuts.
Oh my God, you made it. Yay.
It's about time, Nathan. Damn.
Shh, the movie's starting.
If I had two heads and constant headaches, which one do you think I'd shoot, the left or the right?
I'm Nathan Simmons, and I heard that this happened in Australia. And this is the thing that happened is the Silver Linings playlist. The show, I haven't done this in a minute. The show where we try to find the silver linings in some of cinema's bleakest endings. And I think this is the most laughter we're going to get in this episode is right up top.
I tried very hard in my notes to sprinkle in some jokes to make this a more upbeat episode. But I feel you on that.
This is, not to toot my own horn, but I think this is the biggest bummer of any movie that I've picked for the show.
Okay.
I also think that it's one of the most relentless movies. We'll get into it, but it's like one of the most relentlessly upsetting movies I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, okay. This is a first time watch for me, and we'll get into it when we get to it. But if you're a newcomer to the show, first of all, thank you for joining in. Second of all, normally there is a third voice that you're hearing here.
Right.
Mally is not here with us because I guess if it's not his pick for the week, he just doesn't show up anymore.
Specifically, if it's my pick, he doesn't show up anymore.
True. Yeah.
I thought you were going to do a bit like O'Malley's not here. He's in 5 garbage bags.
Well, I was thinking about it, and I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to stick with my original thought, which is he said, if it's not my episode, I'm not showing up. So,
but also, the man got employment.
Yeah,
so
he's working.
Kudos to him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Our show, as Nathan pointed out, is we like to watch movies such as the movie we're watching today, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. Movies that don't have your happily ever after right off into the sunset ending. And the caveat is we talk about them and then try to find a silver lining to those movies. We try, I guess we should say. We can't guarantee it.
Yeah.
But we try.
This was one that I have. So this is my 3rd season with the show, right? And so I have added this movie and deleted it all 3 seasons so far. And then finally I said, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
This was a second time watch for me.
Okay.
I watched this for the first time 10 years ago, thereabouts. Random late night Netflix watch. I was like, well, first of all, that's the best title for any movie I've ever seen.
I don't know. He's got another movie called I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay.
That's a pretty good title. What a great title. A movie that I still haven't seen, but I will get around to at some point. I love Park Chan-wook, by the way.
Same. Big fan.
I love his whole vibe. You know, there's that incredible thing that just happened with Korean film in, the last 20, 30 years where, all the kids who grew up under a ton of censorship suddenly were like, not only can we make movies, we're going to make whatever the fuck we want. Yep. And so they threw everything at the screen, which is why you get all these films that have such varying and interesting tonal shifts. And boy, howdy, does this movie have those.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
But I saw this at 1 a.m, random watch. And I think at the end of it, this was one of those things where I sat there staring at the screen and just watched the credits roll in silence. And then the movie ended and I continued staring at the screen as Netflix started to autoplay something else. I just couldn't really grapple with what I had just seen, I guess. And it was my first entry into Korean film. And since then, it's one of the reasons why it took me a long time to watch. I saw this before Old Boy.
Oh, okay.
And so I didn't see Old Boy until maybe 5 years ago.
Damn.
Yeah, I think the Spike Lee remake was coming out, and I was like, I should probably watch that original.
God.
Instead of the remake. I still haven't seen that.
Both previous episodes on the show.
But this is part of his loose Vengeance trilogy. This movie, Old Boy, and then Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, or just Lady Vengeance, which is a great sort of tonal matching. I think one of the things that's so fascinating about this movie in particular to me is that it really feels like a modern version of a Greek tragedy. Yep. And I mean that in every possible way. Not only is it just a parade of what is the worst things that can happen to people that we can put on screen, but also the way it is executed in a very almost cartoonishly depressing style, and also the weird sort of plot contrivances that have to occur to link certain events.
Yeah.
It's all very much like, oh, this is like what Oedipus would be like, or, you know, one of those Greek tragedies if it were written today.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I actually wrote down Korean filmmakers have this uncanny ability, and also it extends to like Japanese filmmaking, things like that.
Yeah.
But basically anything that's not American, that's coming from the Asian side of cinema, has this uncanny ability to have like these fluctuating paces in their movie. Like at times, it's like the opening of this movie, it's almost at like an unnatural speed. Like here's just a bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah.
And then they also could simultaneously hold out on revealing things for so long. Like, just we watch Ryu go through just his day-to-day life in the factory. There's no reason we need to watch 4 full minutes of him just working in the factory, but we do.
But we get those really great... It's so interesting how some parts of this movie are so subtle and then others are hit you over the head, right?
Yeah.
Like with Ryu in the factory, we see him sit down in what we think is like a lunch break, but then the day shift crew comes in. Like a completely different set of guys come in and you're like, oh, this guy just never stops working so he can take care of his sister. And it's those sort of unspoken moments. The fact that everyone else in the factory is wearing earmuffs except for him.
Because it doesn't matter.
I love that attention to detail. And then, there are moments where the movie just sort of lets you infer, you know, certain elements like, oh, this character is in the wrong place at the wrong time. They're not even involved in this. You know, there's,
Park Chan-wook does that a lot. Like he does that in Old Boy where like a bombshell will happen and then we just cut away to something totally unrelated before you get the character's like spectrum of feelings about it. Like when that twist happens in Old Boy, it cuts to I can't remember her name, but it cuts to the girl with her wings on. And it just sits there for a moment. It lets you as an audience too, like holy, like it takes your breath away. And you don't really get that with American filmmaking unless you get into the real art house stuff.
I agree. It's one of the reasons why I love Bong Joon-ho as well. Like the host and Parasite especially are so good at balancing those, oh my god, everything is fucked moments with like a little bit of levity.
Yeah, they both compete for my favorite Korean filmmaker.
100%.
On any given day, I might pick the other one. I just don't know.
If you get a chance to snag the Criterion edition of Parasite, there is a great mini doc that's the two of them like talking about the history of Korean cinema.
That sounds amazing.
It's everything. Like it rules.
I don't want to also, I mean, we're talking about Korean filmmaking because we're talking about this movie, but also I don't want to dismiss Japanese filmmaking too. Have you seen Anti-Porno?
No. Great title though.
It's an amazing title, an amazing poster too. I only bring it up because it has such similarities to the filmmaking styles of Park Chan-wook and of Bong Joon-ho. I highly recommend it. Maybe a contender for the show, maybe, but I think you would really fuck with it.
Okay. Oh, and it's only 76 minutes. Here we go.
It's a breeze, buddy, but it is a great movie. And of course, Battle Royale, fucking amazing movie. Like you're sleeping on Asian filmmaking if you're, you know, one of these people that are like, I don't want to watch subtitles. Like Bong Joon-ho said it best, get over that 1-inch barrier and you will just open your world. Because man, there's some amazing movies. And we're going to be talking about another a Japanese movie later on this season.
And an Indonesian movie later this season. Like,
I'm excited for both of them.
Me too, man. We got some fun stuff coming up. But first, we got to talk about this movie. Should we put a trigger warning at the top of this movie or this episode? Because it's so... I feel like maybe... This is controversial, but maybe we move the recommendations to the top of the episode.
Okay.
Like, do we recommend people watch this?
That's a good idea. We haven't spoiled anything yet, so I don't know. I don't know if we didn't necessarily need to do like a preamble before the the opening theme song here. But I have to say we can at least if you're uncomfortable with child death, child endangerment, things like that, maybe sit this one out. I will say it's not as gruesome as something like say Hereditary is.
Oh sure,
but there's some.
It's more of a tonal kind of thing. Like this movie is a pit in your stomach.
Yes,
it was not funny, but my partner said. Like, oh, that looks like a lot. When I sent her the trailer and I said, I don't think you can watch this movie. Like, I think it would like I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't blame someone for tapping out while watching this, but I do think it's kind of incredible.
Can I tell you that I had never seen this movie before,
Right.
and you told me, it's just like broadly, it's about a child kidnapping, and I was like, okay, and I know it's from the guy who did Old Boy, so I know what we're in for. Plus,
I didn't want to spoil it, but I was like, should I give Dustin a heads up? Like,
well, also we're doing it for the show, so I know it's not going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
But I mentioned it to Priscilla. I was like, hey, I gotta watch this Park Chan-wook movie for the show. Do you want to watch it with me? And she goes, well, what's it about? And I said, I don't know, but Nathan told me it's about a child kidnapping. She goes, I don't think I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's fair enough.
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
I think this movie is fantastic. It's very difficult for me to say it's a recommend.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that being said, it's gorgeously photographed. Song Kang-ho might be one of my favorite actors on the planet.
I wrote down the same note. I was like, this guy, his career is incredible.
Yeah.
He has, you were just drawn to his eyes, dude. You can tell everything that guy is thinking about without him saying a word.
And he says maybe a total of 10 sentences in this movie. And he just sells it all from his facial expressions and his physicality.
And as such a serious character as he has some very funny moments. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
He plays it so serious, what makes it even better. But to answer your question, I do recommend this movie. It does have some hard to watch scenes, but it also has some funny ones that I think balance it out pretty well. And I found a lot of the characters endearing in this.
I did too. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most important things. Jumping ahead to the ending, but Park says to Ryu, I know you're a good guy.
Yes. Oh my God, that line. Oh.
Everything that happens in this movie is the worst version of the mistake that could happen. It's all accidental.
Yeah. No, your analysis of this being a modern Greek tragedy is very apt. I got that post 9/11, and this is right after 9/11, which I mean, it's a Korean film, so but I got that same sense of dread that we were dealing with in that time of the early 2000s of everything is the worst possible version of it. And this movie it's not as depraved as I would say Old Boy is, but it's tough. It's a tough watch.
Yeah, I think I should throw this out there as well. I did not intend to pick 2 movies this season with a child autopsy scene. I fully had forgotten about that in this movie. Everything, I remembered the drowning scene. That is stuck in my head for years.
Yeah.
But the stuff after that, there are moments where I'm you purposefully pushing the boundaries of comfortability. And it's done in a very interesting way that's not always tasteful, but it is always compelling.
So compelling.
And it makes sense to me, especially when you put it in terms of when this came out. It totally makes sense to me that American critics really dragged this fucking movie when it came out.
They sure did. We'll talk about it in a minute, but it's at a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. So
I think that's too low.
Way too low.
I mean, I get not vibing with it, but I think it's impossible to say that this movie, people were calling this movie childish, a waste.
Yeah.
Some of the meanest reviews I think I've read for Park Chan-wook's whole career.
And then Old Boy is a year later, and it gets universal appraise.
Right.
It's a bit weird. Have you seen The Handmaiden?
I have not.
Oh my God.
That's a blind spot for me for sure.
It's another Park Chan-wook movie. I don't think this movie is as well crafted as The Handmaiden, and it has a much more happier ending. I won't say it's roses and rainbows, but it's very modern. And man, I can't recommend it enough to people. Anytime people talk about Park Chan-wook, they always like to talk about Old Boy and things like that. And The Handmaiden, I feel like it's glossed over, but it's next to Old Boy. It might be my favorite movie of his. Wow. It's so fucking good.
How do you feel about Snowpiercer?
I dig Snowpiercer. I think I don't know. I don't go back to it often. I think I've maybe seen it twice, but Bong Joon-ho I feel like has a different sense of direction than Park Chan-wook does, and I think I would like to see. I know this is sacrilegious to say. I think I'd rather see Park Chan-wook's version of Snowpiercer than Bong Joon-ho's version.
That's always been kind of my contention too. I was like, if he wasn't working on Stoker at the time, would he have had the time to make Snowpiercer, and would I like the movie more?
Yeah. I dig Snowpiercer. I think it may also be a contender for the show, but it's not my favorite of Bong Joon-ho's movies for sure.
You want to talk about movies with zero subtlety, though?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, I just feel like the cast in that movie is a bit odd.
It is.
Chris Evans, I don't think it does a bad job, but I'm like, really? Him? Right. And then Ed Harris is your big bad?
It is funny, though. Chris Evans has done interviews in the last few years where he's been like, yeah, I read that script and it made no sense to me. And I was like, everything is like pretty much banging you on the head.
Yeah, it's so like obvious. It's so right there. It's Soylent Green basically on a train. Like that's all it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll go back to Snowpiercer every once in a while, but yeah, it's never one that I'm like, holy shit, like I am with Parasite. So
I think you might like he did a vampire movie called Thirst also, which is like super weird, and I love it.
All these movies we're talking about, like Thirst and Stoker and Lady Vengeance, I've always hovered around, just like this movie. I've always hovered the play button on, and I'm like, do I want to commit to a 2.5 hour movie right now? And I just never do, and I don't know why, because they're never disappointing.
That's the thing, is like he asked the very important question: what if Song Kang-ho was a sexy vampire?
I'm in. I'm fucking in.
It's a Catholic priest who turned into a sexy vampire. It's a wild movie.
I'm in. No, like I said, I've hovered over this episode plenty of times, but I'm glad I finally did. And I think if you haven't seen the movie, you should definitely watch it if you're into this kind of thing before you listen to our episode, because I would hate to spoil it and then you're like, damn, that sounds good. I wish I didn't know what I was getting into, you know?
Right. Because I promise you won't know where this is going.
No, you won't.
I mean, there's a lot.
But I gotta say, Nathan, I got one big beef with this movie.
Okay.
Our lead character, Ryu, not a single Hadouken in this whole fucking movie. What are we doing?
Man, I know.
What a disappointment. I thought that's where the third act was going. Sorry, I'm trying to sprinkle in stupid jokes.
No, thank you. I've got a couple written down where I'm like, maybe this is a fun conversation. But I mean, also we've got Doona in this movie, crushing. I love her, and I actually saw this movie for the first time around like shortly before I think Cloud Atlas came out.
I still have not.
It is a fascinating disaster.
Yeah,
but there are things to love about that movie, including her performance.
Okay, she's Young Mi? Is that her, the girlfriend?
Yes, yeah, Cha, yeah.
One question before we get into like the production and all that stuff. Does the sister ever get named?
No.
Okay.
I think in the credits she's even referred to as Ryu's sister.
Okay, because I kept writing down his sister, and I'm like, surely she's got a name, and then no one ever says it.
No, only a few. I mean, only a few people are named on screen. Yeah. Like it's kind of wild.
I mean, it works.
Yeah,
I know who everybody is,
absolutely,
without even needing their name. So, all right, well, let's get into the production, the release, all that good stuff about Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. So as we mentioned, the year is 2002. The director is, of course, the great Park Chan-wook. The movie stars Song Kang-ho, Shin, Ha-kyun, and Doona, as you mentioned. The budget was $4 million. It only managed to gross $2 million worldwide. Oof. And also, as I mentioned, it currently sits at a way too low 53% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's weird. It was picked up for North American release by that Tartan Films label that like was really trying to push foreign films. They did that. You remember they had that Asia Extreme label. That's what they called it. And so it just made everything seem, when it came out, seem very edgelordy. You know, even Battle Royale and Old Boy got put out with a DVD case that said Asia Extreme.
I think I had the Battle Royale one.
I did too. But it screened on 3 theaters in New York City, made $9,000 opening weekend in America. Like bonkers.
That's so low. Oof.
It sucks.
I think what was it? I just heard recently, like Priscilla debuted on like 6 screens on its limited run and made like $200,000.
Wow.
So I mean, I think that's what maybe it was the holdovers. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, it's crazy. This movie is rated this low, gross that low. I mean, I get this is early on in his career,
right,
where people don't really know the name Park. It's not until Old Boy hits,
right,
that he's like, oh, holy shit, we got to pay attention to this guy. But like 53%, I'd put this mid 80s at least.
Yeah,
like it's a well crafted movie. It's, like I said, it's not as stylistic and artsy as Old Boy is, and it's not as well crafted as Handmaiden. But for this being so early on in his career and to be overlooked like it is, it's crazy.
We still get bugs coming out of body parts in this one, though.
Yep, we sure do. We sure do. Why don't we watch the trailer, which I've never seen?
Me neither.
I want to see how they market this thing.
Yeah, I sent the trailer to Ashley, but did not watch it myself. I was like, this will probably give her an idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's watch it together.
Cool.
Damn it, CJ. All you had to do was follow the train.
박 사장, 정말 물어보고 싶은 게 있는데 말이요.
그 새끼들 찾으면 어쩔 생각이야?
Gosh. This music.
Oldboy had a very similar kind of song for its trailer.
Yeah. It's the international trailer. So I wonder if this was like the trailer they cut trying to capitalize on the Oldboy hype, or if this was the OG trailer.
Oh, that's a good point.
All tragedy.
All tragedy starts with her.
세상에는 말이야. 좋은 유괴가 있고 나쁜 유괴가 있어. 좋은 유괴는 부모의 협조가 필수적이지. 경찰이 신고를 하니까
I guess since we're it's mostly subtitles.
Right.
This is not great for the audience. I'm realizing this in real time.
That's okay. I was just gonna say, like, rewatching this trailer, I'm putting together that if there's anybody to blame for the worst things that happen in this movie, it might be Doona, but I don't know if that's, well, at least the offset.
No, I'd listen. I'd buy that argument.
I think at some point, Park is just kind of, going rogue.
Yeah. From Park Chan-wook to director of JSA, which I still haven't seen.
It's a blast.
I'm sure it is. The best is yet to come in 2002 Korean cinema.
I gotta say, it sucks that this movie was like such a flop because Joint Security Area was at the time the highest grossing South Korean film of all time.
Damn,
at the time of its release, I believe.
Okay.
So like he like came out of the gate with like a hugely successful action thriller, and the studio was basically like, we will give you the budget to make whatever you want.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I have this really fucked up script I never finished.
God, I don't know why I even hesitate anytime I click on one of his movies. Like, I don't know. Am I going to commit to a 2.5 hour, 3 hour thing and be disappointed? I never am.
I think you are right, though. Like, it is, sometimes it does feel sort of like homework, I guess, maybe, like where you're just like, I really have to like devote some time to reading the subtitles and because I do find so much is lost in a dub. I don't even know if there is a dub for this one.
I can't do dubs.
Yeah.
I can't, no matter what. And the only thing I can do dubs on is like simple anime.
Some
like
anime,
if I'm watching like Dragon Ball Z or something, I can do that. But if I'm watching anything of substance, like, and it's not even the subtitles that bother me. I feel like it's just the differences in the conventional filmmaking techniques. Like,
yes, yeah.
Like I mentioned, like Asian filmmakers will throw a lot at you really quick and then slow things down and then throw things at you real quick. And it's not homework because I enjoy doing it, but it is like, I got to turn on a different part of my brain, you know?
Well, particularly though, when you're watching it for a show or something, like if you're watching it to take notes, like this movie took 2.5 hours. Like I was going back to like take down notes, and then I was like, oh, this was a really interesting visual. What was that? And I'll go to bat for some dubs, like the most of the Miyazaki dubs I actually quite enjoy. Like the Princess Mononoke dub I think is fantastic, but like, yeah, this movie I just feel like is so specifically its own thing that I can't imagine changing it in any way.
Plus you lose a lot of the nuances in dubs, you know?
Well, and Warner Brothers has been trying to develop a remake of this for like 10 years at this point. I believe the most recent screenwriter attached was the guy who wrote Secret Invasion, so good luck.
I thought about that actually while watching. I'm like, this could play for a modern audience, but I'm like, why bother? Just put this on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and this movie doesn't feel stuck in a particular time either. Yeah. Like I think it just plays.
And I was worried watching it because for like the first like 15, 20 minutes, I only had like 2 notes. I'm like, oh no, am I not going to have anything to say about this? But then I ended up with a lot more. So I
think that might happen with our Indonesian movie later this season. Yeah. Like I'm worried it's going to be a 15-minute episode of us being like, well, that fucking ruled, right?
That's cool. That's cool as shit. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen right there. Yeah, probably.
The old apostle treatment. Also, speaking of the way this movie plays, I watched this on Tubi the God.
I am so glad you brought this up because I started watching this on my personal server at home, and then like 50 minutes in, it just shut down. I'm like, oh man, and so I'm like, surely this is playing somewhere. I thought maybe Netflix or something. Yeah. And I search, and of course, it's on fucking Tubi. And dude, when I tell you that the ad break, because I was like, all right, I'm 50 minutes in. I'm just gonna fast forward to where I was and continue watching.
Yeah,
I'm at the the river scene where he's burying his sister.
Yeah.
And dude, the ad cuts right when Dongjin finds his daughter's body.
Same.
And it's like, go to T-Mobile and buy an iPhone or whatever the fuck. I'm like, what the fuck?
My God. For me, it was, so he's just found his daughter's body and it smash cuts to Kris Jenner promoting Shutterfly.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
There was a dog skiing in one commercial.
Would have been great if when Ryu's chasing the little girl around the room with the Polaroid trying to get a picture of her crying, that's when it cuts to Shutterfly.
Oh my God.
But all that to say, no diss on Tubi. Thank you for coming through. Like, I appreciated it.
I love Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
So Tubi is like the streaming equivalent of going to the video store. Like it is, what the fuck is this? I almost put a Tubi original on the schedule this year and I'm still thinking about doing it. I don't know, man. I really want to. I also got to say, though, we got to do better with subtitles as a nation.
Yeah.
Like the subtitles on the version on Tubi had some issues.
Yeah.
There were some typos throughout.
Yeah.
This is not a he moans like a cop scenario. I'm reading it.
God, he moans like a cop. All right. So my first note of the movie is a confession.
Okay.
My confession is, and I know this is upsetting because I'm about to turn 33. In fact, by the time this episode comes out, my birthday will have already passed, but I don't know my blood type.
It should be on your license, I think.
Oh, shit. Should it?
I think so.
Should I go grab my wallet and see if we can find out?
Go get your wallet.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, I'll grab mine. We'll do a blood reveal on the show.
Should I put a little hold music here while we go get our wallets? Okay.
Yeah, I think I was wrong as shit.
I was gonna say I got my wallet and I look at it. I don't see it anywhere.
No, you're right. It just lists that I'm a donor.
Same as here.
Hey, nice.
That's my blood type, donor. Yeah, that's bizarre.
I think I'm AO positive, but I don't know. It could just be that AO is in my heart.
I don't know. I feel like I should know that.
Yeah,
but I never did. Yeah.
This doctor is wild. Mm-hmm. He's I don't know. Is he the same doctor that says later on, I'm not an optimistic doctor?
It's two different guys.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because I looked for that specifically. Yeah. He's only talks to Ryu in the beginning and then later on. And then the other one is a totally different doctor that talks to Dongjin. Yeah.
But it's so right away, we really get the tenor of Shin Ha-kyun's performance, who is unbelievable in this movie.
He's so good.
He looks absolutely. By the way, he's in JSA as well. He's fantastic. But he just looks obliterated. When this doctor is spelling out B for him.
Yeah.
Why did you lie about your blood type?
So I guess because I'm sure there's a ton of people that are going to listen to this episode that haven't seen the movie.
Sure.
So a brief synopsis of this movie is Ryu has a sister who is not named that is very sick and needs a kidney transplant. He was going to go to art school, but when his sister got sick, he started working in a factory to help care for her.
He is deaf and mute.
She constantly says that she doesn't want to be a burden on people. And, he has a girlfriend, Young-mi, who is an anarchist.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about her. She's a character for sure. But Ryu gets laid off from his job at the factory, and he decides, I'm going to try and sell one of my kidneys, even though I'm not a compatible match for my sister. I will sell my kidneys, one of my kidneys, to get the money.
Yeah, he was going to trade it with a black market group.
Right, a trade. Yeah, he pays a black market group this X amount of money plus one of his kidneys, and they'll get one that's compatible for his sister.
Right.
And it doesn't go well.
Right.
Which I guess that's the broad synopsis. And then what they decide to do is we're going to kidnap the daughter of the guy that fired me from my factory job, hold her for ransom. And then with that money, I'll be able to get a real kidney for my sister. Because at that point, someone on the transplant list comes through that is compatible with his sister.
And he needs 10 million won to do it.
Yeah.
The exact amount of money he already spent.
Yes.
Then they have to pivot because they see this other executive because they're like, hey, I have to kidnap somebody that's not connected to me at all.
If we kidnap the guy that laid me off's daughter, I'm going to be one of the primary suspects. So they pivot and take someone, another guy that works there's daughter, and then things go south from there, which we'll get there when we get there. But that's the broad synopsis of it. It kind of starts as like almost a black comedy, and then very quickly pivots to a dark thriller.
Yeah, absolutely. But even then, like, not so much a thriller as like it is a drama, like with like thriller elements. Like there is a torture scene, but even then it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a thriller. It just feels like, you know, it's a tragedy. Like we are watching the dominoes fall over, everything fall apart, people getting worse and giving into their worst instincts.
It's funny because there's another movie that we're doing later on this season that has a very similar kind of structure where at first it's one of my picks. It starts off very comedy driven, like it's fast paced, energetic, and then it's like the last hour is just like, all right, everything that has been set up here is now getting toppled over.
Right.
And it's inevitable that these things are going to happen, and it's much darker, but it's a fascinating movie. I found myself laughing at times and then, groaning at others.
And then sometimes laughing at something that's not funny just because there has been a violent release in the middle of all this terribleness. And then, the movie is really about like just the dehumanization that has to occur for revenge.
Yeah. And it's almost transactional. Like it's not up for debate. Like when you said, and we're already talking about the ending, but when Dong-jin says to Ryu, like, I know you're a good person, but you understand why I have to kill you, right?
Yeah.
Even though Ryu's deaf and mute, I feel like he understands. He's
implicitly.
Like, yeah.
I mean, he cuts him free and he doesn't run away.
Yeah.
You know?
He doesn't try to attack him. He doesn't try to do anything. He's just like, he kind of accepts. It's kind of like at the end, Only God Forgives when Ryan Gosling goes and gets his arms cut off. He's like, nah, I understand. It's very interesting. And I feel like that is specifically an Asian sentiment. Like when the Mr. Peng tries to commit seppuku in front of Mr. Park.
Oh yeah, in the street, and everyone just kind of lets it play out for a minute.
Yeah, it's something that you don't see in American movies, I feel like.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, Ryu's working in this factory, and man, I just wrote down, if I was deaf, a factory is the last place I'd want to work. There's like boiling hot shit happening all around him.
There's metal falling from the sky. Yeah, everyone else is wearing earmuffs. He has to like look around and notice when people start leaving. Like everything is like muted for him, and we get a sense immediately of how bone tired he is.
Yeah.
He is slightly out of step with everyone else. He reacts like he hasn't seen the sun in days. And like there's one worker in the background who's only worked one shift who's got bloody hands like when they're leaving. And so imagine just like how worn down he is. But we also immediately get a sense of what a kind heart he has, because not only has he sent in this letter to be read on the radio so that his sister can hear how much he loves her.
Yeah.
But he helps, an unhoused person pull their pants up while they're like just sitting outside of the apartment building. And it's just like, he just does it and then continues on with his day.
Yeah. This guy works basically double shifts, and he's deaf and mute in a factory that is completely hazardous to him just being there.
Yeah.
And there's no safety precautions in place for him. And then, like you said, he helps out a homeless gentleman, and he writes sweet letters to his sister. Like, he does have a good heart.
He also, like, there's that moment where, you know, we hear just all of the screaming and carrying on in the apartment.
Oh my God.
And he's laying there, and the narration tells us, and we get these really lovely, like, silent film style placards that tell us, you know, his narration. But, like, you know, he was sold this place because he was deaf, and so the real estate guy probably thought he didn't care.
Yeah.
But he says, if my sister can't sleep, neither can I.
Yeah, his sister is wailing on the floor just because she's in pain and she can't sleep.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, because this seems inevitable, I think. Nathan, why don't we, me, you, and Mally, ever jerk off in a line together like this?
I mean, I was going to ask, is this our bit part? Have we figured it out already?
If so, I got to be the guy with the naked woman taped to the back of his head.
Oh my God. So this is like immediately gives you an idea of the balance of tones, right? Like we cut to these dudes in a line with their ears against the wall, jerking off because they think they hear sex next door.
Yes.
And then the camera pans through the wall and we see that it's Ryu's sister who's wailing in pain on the floor. floor.
Yeah.
And it is just like, what a gut punch.
One of the guys has a picture of a naked woman taped to the back of his head, so the guy behind him.
Right. The third guy in the line has that, so only the guy in the back gets a visual for this, which is kind of incredible. Like,
it feels like the first two guys aren't pulling their weight, and they should also have something taped to the back of their heads.
Well, so what I'm wondering is the guy in the back of the line, is he the one paying rent?
Oh, and he's like, you know what?
So he gets to see the boobs this time.
That's right. They rotate out.
Yeah.
It's like a human centipede that's detachable. Like you can just you can rotate out who's at the back of the line.
If you pay the rent next month, you get to see the boobs.
Dude, how great of a line would that have been? Of when is it going to be my turn or something?
When do I get the page? Oh man.
Yeah, I am so glad I don't live in an apartment anymore, because this is absolute hell. Like this family is living in.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, it's Ryu is talking to his girlfriend, and at this point he's gone to the doctor, and the doctor's like, look, you know, your sister is not doing well. We don't have anyone that's compatible right now.
Yeah.
I don't know why you signed up to have your kidney given to where you don't have the same blood type. And this is like you mentioned, like the contrivances that have to be put in place here. You know, he takes his anger out by going to a batting range,
right,
and just hitting balls. And then he goes to the bathroom, and these guys come in and put up stickers on the wall that just say organs for sale and a phone number. And this is after, I should say, he gets laid off from his job.
Yes, yeah.
They don't say why.
Right.
But yeah.
It seems to be probably because his productivity's got to be like plummeting because of how tired he is. But also, I love this sequence where he's talking to his girlfriend and the mirror is dividing them. Like they lay in bed with a mirror facing them so they can speak through sign language.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the little touches like that are just so interesting and human to me. Like there's a whole history just from a prop.
Yeah, the blocking in this movie, there's a couple of different instances.
Yeah.
One of my favorite is later on when the private investigator is talking to Dong Jin, and I'm like, the decision to not show him in that van.
Didn't put his face out. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
It's brilliant.
It is brilliant. Yeah, so he decides, he calls these mobsters basically to set up an organ transfer. And I love this shot of Ryu walking up the stairs with these criminals. And as he ascends the stairs, each jump to the next floor, the hallway gets tighter.
Yep.
Like the walls are closing in. He's running out of options.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
I should mention in my notes, I wrote down, wow, Nathan, way to make me watch a movie where a guy gets laid off right after I recently got laid off.
I know. I did think about that,
but it's okay. I actually have news. I have a third interview with the company right after this phone call. So
awesome.
All is okay so far. We'll see, but stay tuned to next week's episode to find out if I have a job.
Just don't meet them in a parking garage that has a porta potty and 2 coolers in it.
2 coolers, and I'm bringing roughly 7,639 USD because that's how much 10 million won.
Oh, interesting. So I'm obsessed with the doctor here.
Oh my God.
She asks for his blood type. Then she walks over to her little desk to shoot up some heroin or morphine or something. And she's got this little, and I'm assuming they set this up every time they move their mobile office, but she's got this little desk. She's got like a chart, and she has her little degree posted on the wall.
I'm so glad you brought this up. This was potentially one of my prop cods, but the cross section of the frog that she has splayed out.
Her little file thing with the books. Like, what is she reading?
I love the little like kidney chart on the back. It's like how when you go to the doctor's office and you see that there and you're like, oh, this means they're credible.
And her performance is so interesting to me because there are moments where it seems like she does not want to be doing this.
Yeah.
Like this is just like, she's a disgraced doctor who is just trying to, get a job.
At times it felt like the sons were putting, because we find out later that these 2 guys are her sons.
Oh, in a truly disgusting moment.
Oh, we'll talk about it. But it felt like they were almost like putting her up to it. But I didn't understand her shooting up whatever it is she's shooting up, because Ryu goes to help her because she's got shaking hands.
Yeah, there's a weirdly sweet moment. This shows just the depth of his compassion that this doctor is about to do drugs and she can't find the vein because her hands won't stop shaking.
Yeah.
And so he walks over and just holds her arm still for her and helps and takes the needle. It's this nice moment of everyone just sort of all agreeing, hey, we're in a really bad spot, right?
Yeah.
And then smash cut to Ryu waking up on the ground naked with his kidney stolen.
Yeah. I know you probably haven't seen the movie, and it doesn't really spoil anything if you know anything about the first movie and the ones that follow after. But this is exactly how Saw X starts off. Basically,
I believe it.
Basically,
Have we talked about this since you saw it? You loved it, right?
I wouldn't say love. I feel like love is a strong word.
Okay.
I would say of all the movies, it's probably top 3.
Wow. Okay.
Because I'm not exaggerating. The first 40 minutes or so is just a Lifetime movie. Like it's very nice and sweet. And then it just becomes just another Saw movie after that. But
interesting.
It's a bizarre movie. That's why I enjoyed it. I was like, this is fucking crazy. But I do recommend everyone see it just to treat yourself to the ridiculousness of it. But
I'll check it out at some point.
It also has one of the funniest line readings I've ever heard in a movie in the post-credit scene.
Oh boy.
So stick around for that.
Okay.
I felt like Ryu was recovering very well for the rest of this movie.
Not too bad, right?
He goes to talk to his girlfriend, and who she just starts slapping him around like, you idiot, because the doctor calls him, is like, hey, good news. This is a miracle. This never happens, by the way. We have someone who shot up to the top of the list for your sister to get her kidney. We just need 10 million won to get it to happen.
And he smiles like it's good news, but then he can't process it because he literally spent the exact amount that he needed to save his sister. And so they become convinced, like, okay, well, we got to do something drastic. And so his girlfriend convinces him, hey, you should, have you considered kidnapping?
Might I introduce you to the concept of kidnapping?
And as she says in the trailer, there are good kidnappers and bad kidnappers. Like, we're gonna make sure this kid has a blast.
Yeah.
And we come to find out that, like, she got that's the most upsetting thing, is Yusun, like, came to really like them. Like, we see the photos of her enjoying her time with them later.
Yeah. There's a very sweet moment in this movie that instantly turns into a gut punch with that. But yeah, she basically is like, the reason kidnapping gets a bad rap is because sometimes the child doesn't come back.
Yeah. People call the police and then you got to kill the kid. Like, she's like, what?
He's like, so we'll be good kidnappers. And then she's like, but what if the kid gets attached to us? And I don't want that.
Right.
And she's like trying to convince herself while also convincing Ryu of like, this is what we do.
Oh yeah. I think she's literally like, she's going to have so much fun. She won't even want to go back to her dad. Like, it is
damn near what happened.
It's almost what happens. And then she's also in it for her own thing, right? Because they only need 10 million won. But what she says is that they need to push for 26 million because the movement of capital maximizes the value of money. So it's not even a crime.
Yeah. Yeah. She's so the whole movie, she's like, by the way, we got to destroy the conglomerates, stop American products from coming over here. By the way,
her performance is so funny.
She's such a great character.
Up until the moment where it's not funny anymore. Like, she has one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the movie to me.
Yes. No, she's up until that point, she's great. She's giving me life the whole movie. When she's slapping Ryu around and like after he just had his kidneys stolen and he's like flailing around the room, it's so fucking funny.
And she's kicking him in the face and she's got like toe rings, so she's leaving a mark.
Yeah. And so the plan is, okay, we're gonna steal the guy who fired you's daughter, hold her for ransom. And Ryu's like, well, that's not a good idea because I'd be the prime suspect. We should take someone else's daughter. So we'll take this other guy, Mr. Park's daughter.
And they come to this decision because they see a former employee of Mr. Park's slash himself up with a box cutter, and they're just like, oh yeah, right, like, he's a disgruntled employee, so we gotta go with somebody else. I love this sequence. It's weirdly funny as Mr. Ping like preps to kill himself. Like there's these weird little bits of physical comedy. He stands there, then he like widens his stance, then he takes his jacket off, and then he like pulls his shirt up and his shirt falls back down. Like,
and he forgets the box cutter and he's got to go dig out for it.
Yes. Yeah. It's weirdly like pathetic and sad, but also like it has the timing of a comedic sequence.
Well, even before that, like they're riding down the road and it's like clearly that the driver hit something, and then they cut to like this perfect shot of Mr. Ping underneath the car, but like sticking out from the front of it. Like it is a comedic moment.
It's like if Daffy Duck just got run over.
Exactly. Like he's flattened like an accordion kind of.
It's so weird. And it's such and it is like, there's a few shots in this movie where you're like, what am I looking at?
And they don't explain things for you right away. Typically, you have to kind of come to the realization yourself, which I appreciate.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate that I have to do a little bit of work. But very notably, before Mr. Pang tries to commit seppuku, he does slash Mr. Park on his palm.
On the hand, right.
And so, yeah, Ryu and Young Mi decide, okay, we're going to steal his daughter instead. And I'll bring this up later, but the juxtaposition with Mr. Park is incredible with what they do with how you perceive his character versus what he actually is. But I want to save that because that's a conversation we can have in a bit. So yeah, they kidnap the little girl, Mr. Park's daughter, and it's so this scene's so great because he brings her to his sister under the guise that he's just babysitting her.
And she says, "How come Daddy's friend is so poor?"
Yes. And then he's trying to get a Polaroid of her upset to use as leverage in the ransom.
Right.
And so he steals like this little necklace from her and she starts crying and then he starts chasing her around the room.
He rears back to punch her. Like he does like because she
tries to take it back from him and he just like rears. Yeah. He flinches basically.
Yeah. And the thing is like you get immediately, he would never actually physically hurt her on purpose. Like which makes like what happens later even worse.
Yeah. In fact, the scene ends like you think, he's just going to make this little girl cry. He tries to make amends by giving it back to her through a trade.
He does.
You can tell that he starts to warm up to her really quickly.
But the smash cut between her lifting the doll's arm to play a recording of her and her father to, Mr. Park in his home holding the doll in the ransom note, the doll which has been like bloodied up and had the eyes removed. And it's really upsetting. And like, I can't, and immediately he doesn't have any lines in this scene. He doesn't have lines for the next like 15, 20 minutes.
I know.
You get everything he's feeling just from the look in his face. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
And we kind of just jump over like the actual ransom. Like Ryu comes home with a briefcase full of the money and he's on cloud 9. The little girl is watching cartoons.
Yeah.
He like takes the remote from her and switches over to a ball game and then she jumps on him, takes the remote, switches back to cartoons and is like bouncing in his lap. It's very sweet.
This is such a sweet moment. And they cast the most adorable kid that's ever existed in this movie. And then throughout this scene, and I actually backed it up because I realized it's almost subliminally there. You can hear the dripping throughout that entire sequence.
Oh no, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Oof. There's like under the sort of like general apartment noise and the cartoons, you can hear a very, very quiet drip like throughout the scene.
Yeah, so up to this point, the movie has been mostly a black comedy.
Yes.
Very Coen Brothers-esque, I would say. Like, I even wrote down that I was getting Fargo and No Country vibes out of this, where like...
and then it becomes Blood Simple.
Yeah, like even the plot is like someone comes into possession of a bunch of money that doesn't belong to them, and then the world comes crashing down.
Sure.
Because there's a very prolonged shot here where like the little girl is watching cartoons sitting on Ryu's chest and knee and like watching cartoons, and he's on cloud 9 because he's got all this money.
And now all he has to do is bring her home.
Yeah, and it almost feels like we're waiting on this shot way too long.
Yeah.
And then the little girl eating a lollipop, watching cartoons, just casually hands Ryu this note.
Yeah.
And it's a note from his sister that says, because she finds out that the little girl was kidnapped. She says, kidnapping is the worst thing you could do. Please return her home. This is my dying wish.
Yeah.
And Ryu leaps off the floor, almost throws the little girl on the ground, and runs to the bathroom and finds his sister has slit her wrist and is bleeding out in the bathtub. And it's oof.
And the juxtaposition between as he starts to like sort of silently scream and moan in the bathroom, it cuts to the cartoons, like with the characters shouting, and like it is just such a it's heavy. It's devastating.
I was not expecting this hard of a turn watching this movie.
Yeah.
The first thing that pops in my mind when you see this mute guy just wailing like with his moans and screams, I started thinking about Lily Gladstone and Killers of the Flower Moon, and I was like choking up on the couch. I was like, oh my God. But no, it's a hard pivot.
By the way, is there any other competition for Best Actress this year?
I was going to say, if she doesn't win Best Actress, we riot, right? We just burn the whole Academy down.
I don't like that. It's been a minute since I've seen a movie where I'm like, this person's not acting.
Yeah.
Like, this is... This is lived in.
I don't know who you put up against her.
No.
Like, you're going to be like, oh, Margot Robbie and Barbie. And I'm like, that's a good performance. But this is Lily Gladstone in Martin Scorsese movie. I'm sorry.
What if this is... what if she wins for Killers of the Flower Moon and then Ryan Gosling wins for Barbie? Like, those are our two best actor, best actress this year.
I would pay to see that mashup, by the way.
Oh my
that would
God.
be such a good, like, SNL sketch of them two together.
Kenners of the Flower Moon?
There you go. I was going to say Killers of the Flower Barbie, but
Okay.
that's a much better. We'll workshop it.
We'll workshop it. Did you see there is a Barbenheimer film?
I did.
From
I
Full
did.
Moon?
Nothing surprises me anymore.
No.
Nothing surprises me.
Absolutely not.
But throughout the movie, his sister has talked about, oh, when we were kids, we used to play by this river.
Right.
When I die, I want you to bury me by this river. And Ryu's like, oh, that won't happen for 40, 50 years.
Yeah, you'll outlive me.
Yeah. And so he takes her to this river with the little girl in tow.
Before that even happens, we get Mr. Park
Oh, right.
strung up with a bag over his head,
Yeah.
screaming to be let out.
Yeah, Ryu put a bag over his head and tied him to a lamppost and just left him there.
And I think the plan was to bring the kid to him and then, let him go.
Yeah.
But now he's just been left there. And I read that Song Kang-ho was like purposefully destroyed his voice before filming that scene so it would sound authentic.
Yeah.
Like he spent he went into a garage and just screamed for hours.
I like it.
Yeah, it's good shit.
I mean, that's what makes him one of the greats.
Yeah.
So he goes to bury his sister by this river.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this down because this is where the reveal happens about the little girl. Sometimes I get so engrossed in these movies that we cover on the show, especially ones that I haven't seen before, that I forget that things are not going to end well simply based on the premise of our show. Like,
Sure.
I'm like, I'm having a good time. I mean, this is a sad scene, but I'm still engrossed in it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. We only covered downer fucking movies on the show.
Right.
And so he's burying his sister, putting these rocks on top of her. And this guy shows up who I thought was just strung out, but it turns out he's a mentally disabled guy.
How do we feel about this character?
I think the performance is compelling.
Yeah, I do too.
I think I'm saved on it by one line of dialogue, which is when Dong Jin comes back to talk to him later, and he kind of gets the gist of what happened from this guy who doesn't speak.
Right.
And he tells the private detective he's mentally disabled, not stupid.
Right.
And I was like, that is so progressive for a movie from 2002.
Yeah, that is what saves it for me as well, because it feels, for the first few scenes he's in, it feels like a real artifact of, just a thing we don't necessarily do in movies anymore. I don't know.
I just felt like it felt authentic.
Yeah.
Like almost over the top, but like just enough to be believable.
Right.
Because we don't ever nail down what specifically this guy's ailment is, but it was so compelling.
It also adds to the tragedy of characters who are unable to communicate, right?
Yes.
Like for one reason or another.
Yeah. And so Ryu's trying to bury his sister. He's putting these rocks on top of her. He's wrapped her in a blanket. And this mentally disabled gentleman comes by and doesn't understand and just starts taking the rocks off.
Right.
And so Ryu kind of shushes them away. And while he's doing all of this, and remember, he's deaf and mute.
Right.
And so the little girl is asleep in the car that he drove. The mentally disabled guy tries to kind of take the necklace from her that Ryu was bargaining with her before.
That he made, yeah.
Yeah, she wakes up and she tries to get his attention by running along this kind of rickety pier, this little rickety bridge in the river. And man, when it cuts to the shot of Ryu weeping over his dead sister that he just buried.
And you hear that splash.
We hear a splash and then you see out of focus this little girl just floating down the river. And you're like, oh my God, it is actively drowning. And then it cuts to just the close-up of her waterlogged corpse just sitting in this river.
Up against the log.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I wrote down, this is truly one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
And you get that moment where Ryu sees her floating away and the narration box tells us, oh my God, the water's so deep, I couldn't possibly get to her. It's over my head.
Yeah.
And then when he finally sees her, when he finds her body, he's standing like ankle deep in the water and he thinks, I don't know why I thought the water was so deep. It's because I haven't been here since I was a kid.
Yep.
And it's just, you get the feeling that maybe he could have saved her, but he got scared.
Yeah. And then right here is where I get an ad break for fucking Chili's or whatever the fuck.
Oh my God, I know, what the fuck? Fred Armisen trying to sell me a flip phone.
And then just the editing in this scene right here is incredible because it shows the little girl wide-eyed but dead laying in the water.
Yeah.
And then Ryu picks her up, puts her on the ground, and he's staring at her. It cuts to the little girl again, and it cuts back, and now it's the dad, Dong Jin, looking at her. And I'm like, holy shit, he's there. And this is a jump cut further in time where he finally finds her body there. And I'm like, oh, what a brilliant fucking way of doing that. Of like, oh,
it's incredible. And then we cut to that wide of him falling down and just crying. And it's gut wrenching.
It is a lot.
And I don't know. I mean, we just did Candyman. I don't know that I've ever wanted to beat the shit out of a cop more than this interrogation scene where he asks him, "What's your net worth?"
I mean, I get why you have to ask that, but you're at the crime scene. Maybe wait till you get him home.
All right.
You know?
But he then pulls like a paramedics from Hot Rod moment where he gets a phone call.
Oh my God.
And tells his wife, "At least our kid wasn't kidnapped and killed. Yeah. We're lucky because we're poor."
Yeah. Yeah.
But the irony of this cop getting a call because his kid needs an operation.
That is exactly 10 million won.
It's going to cost 10 million won. Yes. It's unbelievable.
It's so, and this shot is so great because like I said earlier, Dong Jin is not visible. You see him in the back of this van.
Yeah.
But like the way the blocking is, you only see the private investigator talking to him and you don't get to see the grief on his face as he's telling all this. Because the guy's like, how much is your net worth? Have you transgressed against anybody that would want to harm you?
And all you see is Dong Jin's hand while he's holding a cigarette that he's not even smoking.
Yeah.
Like he's just, all of his body language tells you there's nothing inside of him right now.
Yeah. And then there's, this autopsy scene, which I want to gloss over for now because I want to come back to it later.
Yes, I agree. The only thing I'll throw in there is that I do appreciate that the movie doesn't like totally spell this out, but the idea is that Park is basically paying his way into all of these situations where he should not be allowed, right?
He shouldn't be allowed to watch his daughter get cut up and all this other stuff.
He shouldn't be allowed to the other autopsy scene or into the apartment whenever they go to investigate it.
Absolutely.
Like he's fully paying off this investigator so that he can be part of the investigation.
And man, when you see the family at the funeral,
oh my gosh,
when they're putting the little casket away and that woman is she faints, she's crying so hard. She says,
"You son, mommy was wrong."
Ugh.
Like she's mad at herself for leaving.
I know.
It's heartbreaking. But interspersed in this is the scene where the cop goes to, Park is laying on the ground, face down in the grass, sobbing.
Gripping the grass to like hold himself onto the earth.
Yes, it's unbelievable. And still not showing his face, which I think is incredible. But then this cop kneels down next to him and then does like a little crab waddle over to him. And it's weirdly funny.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, well, just human behavior is so fucking strange.
Yeah.
When you don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is what I want to talk about, which is I love the juxtaposition of when we meet Dong Jin and his daughter to after this funeral scene, because when you meet him, he's in the car.
Yeah.
You think he's just a typical successful businessman that doesn't care about his family because his daughter's like, "Oh, can I go play at my friend's house?" He's like, "No." "Will you get me a cell phone like hers?" And you think he's just not paying attention to her.
Yeah.
And then we cut to him clinging onto the grass.
Right.
And then one of the most upsetting scenes of the movie, him throwing himself on the couch and just in a daze, like just out of it.
Yeah.
Seeing this photograph of him and his daughter, and then seeing his daughter disappear from that photograph. And then her appearing in front of him, soaking wet and hugging him, saying, "If only you had gotten me those swimming lessons sooner."
Yeah.
Like the grief that this guy is going through
he's shattered.
It's devastating. And it's so much more than I anticipated, because I think that's the brilliance of not only Park Chan-wook's writing and direction here, but also the actor's talents.
Oh
like
my gosh.
we talked about him, but like Song Kang-ho is undervalued, I feel like, in the world of cinema.
Parasite was what, 2018, 2019?
I think so, yeah.
When it came out, I remember talking to a friend of mine that like the scene of him in the car when they're complaining about the smell is to me like one of the finest pieces of silent acting I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And I remember thinking, like this should net him every award. Like this, like how in the world is this not our most celebrated actor?
Yes.
Like, he's incredible.
I got the same vibes from, and I'm blanking on the actor's name here, almost in the same context in Battle Royale.
Oh, sure.
When the teacher gets a phone call from his daughter that hates him, and she says, "I can even smell your bad breath through the phone." And you can see, you see the same performance on his face there. And I'm like, why do we not celebrate these actors more just because they're not American? It's insane.
Dude, we gotta cover Battle Royale on the show, right?
Dude,
how have we not done it yet?
I want to pitch it for this season's finale. I want to do it, but we'll see.
Okay.
Maybe if not, I'll put it on the schedule for next season if we don't do it this season.
Fair enough.
Because I got a lot to say about that movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, this guy sells his house and his company to find the person that killed his daughter.
Yeah.
It becomes like a whole other movie at this point.
It is. What do you make of the moment when we find out someone else can see the water on the floor?
Yeah, I don't know. Because the private investigator comes to his house and he sees a puddle of water on the floor too. Well, there's a couple of instances in this movie where puddles of water play kind of pivotal moment.
Yes. And it makes me wonder, is that meant to be like, are we meant to believe something supernatural has happened? There's been a turning point, or are we just fully in the reality of Park Dong-jin, like losing his mind now?
I think that makes more sense than a supernatural thing. I think that is the movie's way of telling you it's no longer Ryu's movie.
Right.
It is now Dong-jin's movie. And like you said, this is his reality.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't even matter if the private investigator sees an actual puddle of water there or not.
Sure.
The inference there is he understands how much this guy is grieving.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he's a very successful businessman. He sells not only his house, but he says he sold his company too. Mm-hmm. And he is a man possessed the rest of this movie.
Well, and he, we get, I mean, maybe I am jumping ahead a little bit, but we know that he doesn't give a shit what happens to him from now on. Yep. I mean, to the point where later on someone tells him, like, if you don't let me go, you're going to die. And that is the impetus to keep going, because he's like, well, what do I have to live for?
Exactly.
Right?
That's why I think this character is brilliant.
It is. And we get a glimmer of what he could have lived for when they go to check on Mr. Ping, who attacked him.
Yeah. So he tells the private investigator, you asked me once if there's somebody I transgressed that may have a reason to harm me. And so he thinks back to Mr. Peng, who tried to commit seppuku in front of him. And so he goes to his family's house, and boy, the shot here is, I almost threw up.
Yeah.
But it cuts to him and the detective finding Mr. Peng, and not only him dead in his own house, but all of his family dead, minus this one kid that they realize is still alive. But it's just a wide shot of just this family. I guess he must have poisoned them.
Strewn about. Yeah. They were all poisoned.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's reminiscent of, like, the Heaven's Gate footage. Like it's a lot.
Or the Johnstown. Yeah, it's a lot. And so he takes this kid to the hospital and he asks the doctor, like, is this kid going to be okay? And he goes, if I was an optimistic doctor, I'd say there's hope. That's kind of where we leave it at.
Well, and I think in any other movie, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, now he's going to make sure he can take care of this kid. Like everything's going to, like that's his path to redemption is making sure this kid survives. But nothing turns out good for anybody in this movie.
And I think that's relegated to the title of the movie,
Absolutely.
Which seems kind of silly at first. But then when you see, I do kind of have sympathy for Mr. Vengeance here because, it's a lot.
Well, what's fascinating is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance was the international title. It was originally released under the name Vengeance is Mine, which I don't think is nearly as interesting or thematically rich.
Nope. I think it's a perfect title for this movie.
Absolutely.
This part I may not have understood correctly, so you tell me, but he goes and speaks with this woman who I think is Ryu's old teacher. Do I have that right, where he finds the watercolor paintings?
No, this is the lady from the radio.
Oh.
So Park hears, Dong-jin hears the radio broadcast where she's like, I heard your sister died. I'm so sad. It's the lady from the beginning.
Yeah.
And this is one of the contrivances, right? That he's skulking around Ryu's place at the exact same time that the dudes next door are listening loudly to a Delilah radio broadcast.
Oh, and Ryu has moved out of the apartment.
Yes. He's crashing with Doona right now.
Yeah.
We have that great sign language sex scene where they like talk about their love for each other, which I think is really endearing.
It's good.
And also just terribly depressing because she finds him like like just staring into space in the hallway and then invites him in. Yeah. But Park goes to this radio broadcaster who, in a very funny, like another darkly comedic line on the podcast, she says like, "I'm so sorry about your loss. Don't give up. I'm going to send you a kimchi fridge."
Yeah. Like, a kimchi fridge. We're all going to pray for you. Cause he says like, I don't want to be alive anymore, basically. Right. Yeah.
And so she says he sent in a letter and some paintings, and the paintings depict the death of Yusun, which is like a very strange thing like to include.
Yeah, he painted himself burying his sister and then the death of the little girl in the river.
Right. Yeah. And so Park is now on the hunt. He knows that there's a connection to young me. Like, he just doesn't know this kid's name yet. Yeah. Or he's trying to figure it out.
This is what I want to talk about. So he goes back to the river.
Yes.
He stumbles upon the place where Ryu buried his sister, and then the same mentally disabled guy is there. And he kind of starts putting the dots together. And then this is where there's the second autopsy scene, the one of Ryu's sister.
And he is so broken that he yawns.
Dude, I thought it was insane. Like, the parallels between him standing there mournfully as the coroners cut open his daughter versus him seeing the same thing here with Ryu's sister, and he yawns. Yeah. And I'm just like, man.
He's gone. Yeah. He's not there anymore. Like, this is Mr. Vengeance. Like, he in that first scene, the sound design is fucking crazy.
You hear all the organs splicing open and the bones breaking.
You hear the bone saw. Like, it's terrible, and his performance is haunting. You don't see any gore. I mean, you see the scalpel, which is like, I cannot believe that shot exists. But then, the juxtaposition between the two autopsy scenes is fascinating.
Yeah. And you would think at this point in the movie, like all the comedy you're going to get is already passed. But so at the same time that he's talking on the phone with the private investigator, like, he kind of has a name now. He knows who Ryu is.
Right.
And he's talking to the investigator. At the same time, Ryu is talking to his girlfriend about getting back at the black market organ dealers.
Organ traders.
And they're both like, well, what are you going to do when you find them? And Dongjin says, oh, I'll kill them.
Yeah.
And then here's what I thought it was. I thought he was at the hospital sitting by the bedside of the little boy he found, Mr. Peng's son. And, his face is like frosted. So I was like, oh, that's like the little dividing curtain, And then it cuts out after he says, oh, I'll kill him. It cuts out and he's sitting inside his daughter's little bubble ball pit thing. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. He is retreated.
I got a good laugh out of that.
Yeah. Also, we see Inspector Choi is with his daughter at the hospital.
Yes.
Like, she's gotten the transplant she needed.
She's going to be okay.
But he tells us, and this is another example of dehumanizing other people for whatever you need. He says, luckily there was a brain dead patient that could, provide an organ.
Yep.
And it's, it ties in nicely with Park being totally checked out during that autopsy. Like, these people can't be people for him to do what he has to do.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the sister that the coroner's talking about later when he says, oh, it wouldn't have mattered if she got her kidney transplant anyway, she would have been dead?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, he does. He said she didn't have long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she is sickly throughout the movie. Yeah. We see her a couple of times.
There's that really sweet, we skipped over, but there's that really sweet scene where Ryu's like giving her like a sponge bath. Like he's like trying to cool her down. So he's running like cold water over her and she's like getting tickled. And it's like, you really get so much of their relationship.
Yeah.
So that I don't know. It's so heartbreaking. Like, I feel like you get just enough of everybody's home life before everything goes bad.
Yeah. Park's not wrong when he says, I know you're a good guy.
Yeah.
To Ryu later on.
Right.
So this is where we get the great payoff, because throughout the movie, like I said, is when Ryu's upset, he goes to this batting cage and just, strikes a bunch of baseballs with a bat.
Yeah.
He takes this baseball bat. He finds out where these organ dealers are going to be. And what's maybe a great little, like, of course that makes sense, where the organ dealer needs
a cooler.
And so Young Mei finds out where they're at, and she pretends to go in and says, oh, I need an organ. And she goes, now that she knows where they're at, she goes, okay, I'll come back tomorrow with the money. And we cut to the scene where one of the organ dealers goes to this little ice cream shop shop and gets a cooler with a cake in it.
This line is so fucking funny.
Yeah.
He buys the cake, he buys the ice cream cake, and the clerk behind the counter goes, "Are you going far?" And he goes, Hell yeah.
And then she fills it with ice. He walks outside, dumps the cake on the floor, and then just keeps walking, which was so fucking funny.
Would have kept that cake.
I would have kept the cake too.
The cake
but
looked
also,
delicious.
he drops that cake, it doesn't splatter at all. It stays completely rock hard solid.
No,
So-
that was a hard cake.
It's a hard cake, man. You can have a hard cake. You're not going to need a kidney transplant after that. You're going to need new teeth. You're going to need teeth implants. Oh.
So yeah, this scene is buck wild.
Oh, this scene's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot happens here. So Ryu follows this guy to the place where they're stationed at now. And then with the baseball bat, he knocks the guy out cold, opens the door.
This guy, I feel like I should mention it also, is wearing head to toe Converse All Stars tracksuit and looks comfy as fuck.
Yes,
it's a great look.
It's almost like you would imagine like a Russian mobster would be wearing, but he's in South Korea instead.
Sure, it's a Chev Chelios fit.
It is. He is wearing exactly Chev Chelios' outfit. But man, this is where we find out that these people are not only organ thieves, but also because it's one of the people that they've seduced into this scheme they have is pass it on this table, and this guy has his pants around his ankles and the woman's legs over his shoulders. It's not a good look.
No, and even worse, when the guy opens the door, he says, "You said I could go first."
Yeah.
And they do this in front of their mother, the surgeon.
And that's when you find out it's their mom.
Oof.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And it's kind of an insane scene because Ryu comes in with this bat, and then this other guy that's still left, not the one that he knocked out.
Yeah.
He kind of walks over to him with his pants around his ankles.
Oh my, he waddles. Yeah.
He waddles over to him. Ryu tries to hit him with a bat. He catches the bat and then just starts choking him. Ryu jumps on him and stabs him in the neck
with a screwdriver.
And then the mom goes, "Oh, it's in an artery. Don't pull it out." And as she's saying that, he pulls it out and blood just sprays everywhere. And I think this guy also shits his pants.
Oh, really?
Because when he drops to the floor, shaking, covered in blood.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get too crude, but he has got some stains on his pants as well that is not blood.
I missed that. Oh no.
And I'm like, that's great because this guy deserves it.
Sure. And then Ryu drags the other dude downstairs face first.
And then starts wailing on him with this bat.
This is the part of the movie where, more than anything else, I was like, oh yeah, this guy would make Old Boy in a year.
Oh yeah, this makes sense. The hammer scene is it totally. I can see the dots connecting here. But I gotta say, dude, because we see the mom while he's distracted beating the shit out of this unconscious guy get a scalpel. I'm like, man, you got to know if you're deaf, do not turn your back on someone wants to kill you.
Right.
You got to be cognizant at all times. We kind of cut there for a minute.
Yeah.
And we cut to
a darkly comedic beat of young me ordering noodles and telling the guy to hurry, and then the doorbell ringing.
The doorbell rings 3 seconds later.
And she's like, oh.
Yeah. And it turns out it's Dongjin. He's tracked her down. Oof. He's tied her to a chair. He's beat her. And there is something so uncomfortable about a guy sucking on a woman's earlobe before attaching jumper cables to them to torture her.
You don't say?
Yeah.
I don't know why this is the one part of the movie that is a bridge too far for me when it comes to Dongjin, where I'm like I get that you need to connect the jumper cables, but what is licking the first thing you're gonna try? It feels like a different character almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I just feel like a man possessed, like I said, dude.
That's
I feel like he's I want this to be painful and I want this to know it's gonna work.
Humiliating.
It's humiliating. And this is the season, man, of just mid-licking women's faces for whatever reason.
Yeah. 2 of my movies in a row.
He connects these jumper cables to her ears and then asks her where Ryu is. She says, "Fuck you."
He throws a blanket over her head because he can't.
Well, he throws his jacket.
Right.
He throws his jacket over her face so he can't look at her.
Yeah.
And then just cranks his voltage meter up.
Because he can't look at her like she's a person.
Yes. And as he's doing that, the doorbell rings and this delivery guy shows up and says, "Next time, don't just order one dish." and then leaves the food. And then Dongjin's eating it. And as he's eating it, this puddle of piss and blood trickles its way over to him. And then he takes the jacket off of her, throws it on the ground to absorb the piss and the blood.
And keeps eating.
And then he sees the photographs, the Polaroids that Ryu took of the daughter.
Hanging out with them happily.
Yeah, and we should mention, this whole movie, Young Mi's been saying, I'm part of a terrorist organization. We want to dismantle the conglomerates and destroy everything, drive out the American products. And she says, Mister, I should tell you, I'm not just an ordinary person. I'm part of this terrorist organization. If you kill me, they will come for you and will kill you. That's a fact.
If you want to live, just leave me.
Just leave me. He takes this pissed and blood-soaked jacket off the floor, throws it back over her, and then just cranks up the voltage meter and leaves it, and just leaves her to die.
And almost an aside, we learn that he also killed the delivery man.
I only knew about that because I read the Wikipedia article, because I was like, what happened to that guy?
We see him getting like the blanket put over his head, and it's when the coroners are taking him out. You're right. Like, he is not himself anymore. Like,
it's
this
ruthless.
is a man on a mission who can't be stopped.
Yeah.
And she also says in a bit that really breaks my heart, Mister, we didn't kill you, son, on purpose.
Yes, it was a mistake.
Yeah,
is what she says.
Oof.
And I have to believe that the Coen brothers saw this movie before making No Country, because much like in that movie, when Tommy Lee Jones goes back to the motel and Anton Chigurh is waiting behind the door, ready to kill him.
Oh yeah,
we get a very similar scene here where Dongjin camps out at this apartment knowing that Ryu's going to come back for his girlfriend eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryu, we see sitting outside waiting for what appears to be a full day because he's pissing in these bottles.
Right.
And, that's how we see the time passes. And I love the brilliance of using the voltage meter twice.
Yeah.
Because he goes
booby trap.
Yes, he goes to open a back door to the apartment, and Dongjin has connected the voltage meter to it,
right?
So it shocks him and knocks him out, and it's brilliant.
I also love right before this, there's an oddly funny scene of the cops talking about a Young Mi like after she's died, and the shot of Ryu in the elevator when the blanket falls away from her face, and he just tries to hold her hand until the elevator stops. It devastates me.
Oh, and that's when we find out that he also got stabbed by the woman from the black market because she stabbed him in his stitch where they took the kidney out.
Right.
Oh, God.
So did Ryu, because they find the bodies of these organ traders, did Ryu gut these people? Like, did he, do we believe that he did that?
They say, they're like, this guy's not human.
He took pieces from them. Yeah. It's wild.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did. And this is also kind of a funny scene too, because this is when they're in the apartment and the coroners are taking out Young Mi's body.
Yeah.
And the private investigator and his two buddies are sitting on the bed.
Right.
And
that's it. Yeah.
I got a good laugh out of this too, where they're like, oh, well, they, Ryu and Young Mi met in school. They've been together since they were in school. And she's like, well, he went to a deaf school and, she went to the school too, but why would she go to that school too if she wasn't deaf? Like, one of them thinks, well, she must be deaf too. And they're like, no, she lied about it or whatever it is. I'm like, what the
They kicked her out when they found out she wasn't deaf.
Yes. I'm like, I want to see that scene.
I want to see that. Yeah, I want to see that movie. Like you get the loyalty there too, like from the way the other people talk about them. Yeah, and also in the investigator, Choi calls Mr. Park and tells him, I don't want any part of this. This is fucked up. I just found this 3 murder scenes. I will give you all the money back. Like, you got to stop this.
Yep. And Dongjin takes Ryu and drives him out to the river where his daughter died, and he's got him tied up. He takes him into the water. They're both chest deep.
Yeah.
And he says to him, and there's something so terrifying about looking a man in the eye and saying, I know you're a good guy, but I have to kill you, right?
You understand.
Oof.
Yeah.
And Ryu does.
He gets it. Yeah.
Yeah, he totally gets it. And Dongjin cuts his ties and then disappears under the water.
Ooh. That's the bit that terrifies me. Yeah.
He slices Ryu's Achilles tendons, and it is the look he gives him right before he does it is haunting.
Yeah.
Like, Ryu's got to be thinking, like, I don't know what this guy's about to do, but A, he fucking means it.
Yeah.
And B, I deserve it.
Yeah. And then we hold on that wide shot of Ryu, like, gasping and like groaning because he's just like we don't know exactly what has happened yet. I had to look away like when they show the cuts like widening underwater. I could not look at it.
And we stay on Dongjin's face as like the water becomes more and more bloodied and like you hear the gasping get quieter and quieter as so essentially he's drowning while also his Achilles are bleeding out. Like it's intense, man. But far from like the most grotesque thing I've seen in a Park Chan-wook movie. So
that's true.
And then we see Dongjin, relaxing in his car, and he gets a phone call from the hospital where the little boy, Mr. Pang's son, was that he took, and they said, "I'm sorry to tell you that he's died.
Yeah,
and we need you to come claim the body." And he goes, "Oh, you've got the wrong number," and hangs up on him. Yeah. And I'm like, God damn, this movie's bleak.
That was the last little bit of hope. Yep. Like that's it.
Yep,
you're done.
And then Nathan, this is your pick. Do you want to recap what happens right here at the end of the movie? Because this was a wild ending for me.
So Dongjin, we cut to him somewhere else digging a grave when a car full of anarchists pull up. These guys pull up, get out of the car, stare at him for a little bit, smoking cigarettes and double checking their photograph of him. They all take turns stabbing Dongjin over and over again, and then finally put a knife into his chest with a note attached, identifying them as friends of young me.
Yeah.
Basically saying, we sentence you to death. It's a version of the letterhead that we saw her typing up earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
And they leave while he bleeds out, and we cut to a wide shot revealing a ton of bags that were full of pieces of Ryu.
Yeah, he dismembered them.
He was going to bury the pieces of Ryu's body. And credits roll as we hear Dongjin just kind of muttering to himself while he dies.
Yeah.
And in one of the few moments where there's this movie has almost no score, we should mention. And like this is like one of the few bits where music kicks in and it is perfectly deployed.
Dude, the music kicks in when he's digging the grave is so unsettling. Yeah. It's like a detuned trumpet that is just it's so uncomfortable.
It's what I think Trent Reznor's dreams sound like.
Yeah. I'd buy that. No, man, the reveal that Young-mi did have friends in a terrorist organization because they talk earlier, the private investigator finds her little pamphlet.
She's the only member.
She's the only member of this thing. And then when these guys showed up, I was like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reveal in this movie for me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's kind of funny here too, because they get out of the car and they just stare at him, and in unison, in like perfect synchrony, they synchronize smoking the cigarettes that they have. It was
I do love that moment where the guy out front looks back at the one holding the photo and they just exchange like a silent nod before they attack.
Yeah, man. So
it's a lot. That's it.
The moral of the story, I mean, it's a tale as old as time, right? Revenge gets you nowhere.
Right.
Like that is the crux of the movie. And yeah, it's a bizarre movie for sure in terms of the plotting and everything. But I feel like you said, it's just a modern day Greek tragedy. Like this is all things that you're familiar with if you've watched movies or read stories over the years, it's just an interesting take on it. And you can definitely see this guy will go on to make like the craziest fucking movies. But yeah, like watching this now, I'm like, I understand the building blocks to Old Boy and The Handmaiden and all his other work. And I thought this was a good movie.
Yeah.
It's upsetting.
It's gruesome as hell, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. I really think you'll fuck with The Handmaiden. I hope you watch it because it's bonkers.
You should watch Lady Vengeance if you haven't.
How about we do that? We each watch it. We'll report back.
It's our book club.
Because now I feel like I have to watch Lady Vengeance since it's the last of this trilogy, right?
Yeah. I think it's more well regarded than Mr. Vengeance. I think it was something like 70% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes. Still a divisive, upsetting movie, but
sure.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, I think we went through all my notes. Did you have any final words about Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance?
No, we covered all of mine as well.
All right. Well, why don't we bring some levity to this podcast? It very well needs it. And let's talk about Prop Cop. So for new listeners of the show, we have a couple of segments here at the very end to kind of liven things up a little bit after the most dour movies we talk about. But Prop Cop is a segment where Nathan and I are going to look at the props, all of the props in the movie that we just talked about, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and hypothetically, in a fantasy sort of way, take one for ourselves, for our own ownership. Nathan, this is your pick. So what prop do you want from this movie?
I'm worried that I might have stolen yours.
I will be shocked if you do, because this will be a basic connection if we did.
Okay, I picked the ball pit.
Okay, no, I didn't pick the ball pit, but that's a good one. I like that.
All right.
This blew my mind.
What you got?
Okay, so we only get a glimpse at this part of the set once or twice twice I think in the movie. But we talked about the roommates that live next door to Ryu's sister.
Is it the Megadeth poster?
Dude, that I didn't see it until the second time. But yes, in their apartment on the left side of the wall closest to the sister's apartment, there's just a Megadeth poster pinned to it.
Hell yeah, brother.
I thought that was sweet.
By the way, these shitty apartments have some of the best wallpaper I've ever seen.
And it's so funny because you can tell it's a set, how shittily they put it on. You can tell the wallpaper is not put on properly. Man, I just thought that I saw that Megadeth poster and my eyes lit up. I was like, hell yeah.
That's awesome. My backup was the organs for sale stickers.
That was my backup too. That was mine too.
Nice.
Well, let's pick our bit parts. So again, if you're listening to the show for the first time, bit part is where we look at all of the extras in the movie, all of the non-named characters that are in the background. Sometimes they get a little featured moments, but we recast them as ourselves to build our hypothetical filmography. Funny you mentioned that about the stickers. I want to be the black market organ dealer, not the one, but the one that just puts the sticker up that says we sell organs.
Yeah, he's the one who's rocking the Converse tracksuit the rest of the movie.
Yes, absolutely. What would you pick?
So I had two, but the one I really want is I want to be the guy at the very end smoking the cigarette with the photo who gets to stab the note into his chest.
That was my backup.
My other one was when they're loading Young Mi's body into the elevator. There's a group of rubberneckers who are also trying to get into the elevator, and a police officer has to say no, you can't ride this one. I kind of want to be that guy too.
And since Mally's not here, we'll make him the Baskin Robbins employee or whatever that store is that gets the cooler for the guy. Yeah, I didn't want to. I wrote down that I want to be this guy that puts the stickers up before the rest of the movie happened. I was but I can't take it back now. And at least he doesn't get to commit the worst heinous act.
Right.
So yeah. Well, okay, we've arrived. We have our work cut out for us. We have to find the silver lining to Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. So what do you have for me?
This might be the most straightforward one I've ever had.
Okay.
It's over.
Yeah.
He's done.
Yeah.
Literally no one else has to die after this.
Yes, that's a good one. I wrote down that the only thing of much value I found here at the end is knowing that the absolutely awful black market organ dealer family is Deadsville.
Yes, totally.
Knowing that Ryu not only took them out, but took them out gruesomely. I'm like, hell yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Man, $7,000 a piece. How many people do you think they tricked into doing this that makes it that fruitful?
I don't know, man. It's wild.
Anytime I see crime like this in a movie, I'm like, man, you got to be making buku bucks to justify the doing all this, because it's not worth it if you're only making a couple $1,000 a person. You got to be making tens of thousands, it's hundreds of thousands off this shit.
Right.
And I guess a kidney's only $7,000, huh?
Who knew?
It was just crazy. Okay, let's say this. Let's say somebody watched Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, or they listened to our podcast about it, and they're like, Jesus fucking Christ, guys, what the fuck? What is a movie? We always like to offer you this. What is a movie people double feature that they pair nicely with this movie of the week? Our pick-me-up movie alternatives. I kind of already said mine, but I'm going to say it again. I think you watch The Handmaiden.
Okay.
Now, what I will say, if you've never seen it, is it does have some similar tones at times where you're like, Jesus Christ, this is depraved and upsetting.
Sure.
But by the end of the movie, I feel like you'll come around on that, because it's basically a love story, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But man, I went through a roller coaster of emotions watching that movie for the first time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It almost has a Tarantino kind of storytelling where here's a part of the story. Now let's go back and see it from a different point of view. And then like, let's change up the facts that you thought you knew. And it's a fun time, man. I definitely recommend it. So that's my pick me up.
Nice.
What do you got, Nathan?
I went with another movie that reunited a bunch of cast members from this film, but is more of a fun time. 2006 is The Host, directed by Bong Joon-ho, a fun monster movie.
Yes, I still had to see it. I put it on once before and then got distracted and had to go do something, but I need to go back and watch it.
It's wacky as hell. I love it.
I might put it on tonight. Actually, I need to.
It's one of Tarantino's like top 20s. I
heard.
think. Like it's yeah.
I think Edgar Wright even said it was like his top 10.
Yeah.
So
it's a fun time for sure.
And then I mentioned this last week when you told me kind of what this movie is about. Why not throw on Raising Arizona? Because you can watch another baby stealing movie.
And if you want like a revenge movie that's significantly more fun, check out this year's John Wick Chapter 4.
Oh my God. Yeah.
One of the most bonkers. I can't believe that movie's real.
I like John Wick 4, but I do feel like the niche is wearing thin on that franchise.
100%.
We'll see what happens with that. Well, we already gave our recommendations. I tell you, the one thing I really wanted more of in this movie, I feel like you could have taken an extra 5-10 minutes and added this in. I wanted to see more of Dong Jin before the movie pivots.
I agree.
I don't know. I feel like it, maybe it works that you only see so little of him before the movie becomes about him.
Right.
But I don't know, like one more scene or something, I feel like would really solidify how I feel about him.
Him getting a phone call from his ex-wife or something like that, or seeing how he treats his employees or something like that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, so that's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. If you want to get more of our show, you can find us pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this right now, you've got a whole back catalog of episodes that you can burn through.
Yes, sir.
If you haven't already, we ask that you please give us a subscribe, a rating, a feedback, all the good podcast roundup stuff. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit, if you can believe it or not. And if you haven't already, you can also email us. Tell us about our show, you know, how you feel about it. If you got a movie you think we should cover, if you think we got something wrong about this movie or another movie we've covered, you can email us at thesilverliningsplaylist@gmail.com. And that will actually roll over nicely into my clue for next week, because it is a movie that one of our listeners, has requested we cover on the show.
Ooh.
Now, because that is the way it is, it's a movie I have not seen that I was eager to see, and now I have a reason to. So I'm going to give you a very generic, vague clue, but here we go. The title of this movie is seemingly contradictory. So that's really all I could give you, because I haven't seen it. I wanted to wait until we actually do the episode to watch it. So
if I can throw one more hint in there.
Sure.
Next week, more subtitles.
Yes. Yep. There you go. we're panning over to a different continent.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely some subtitles in it. And should we throw a third one in there?
Sure.
Maybe?
What you got?
I mean, we've talked a lot about this season and past seasons about the Craig era of Bond.
Oh, yeah.
This one features a Bond girl in it.
Yes.
So I'm excited to see it.
In a breakthrough role.
Yeah. I know it's a very controversial movie, but I'm excited to see it and finally have some thoughts about it. So, Well, Nathan, any final thoughts, any closing words here before we get out of here?
I just have one question for you.
Oh, okay.
Is a boiled pig afraid of boiling water?
Well, as always,
rest in peace, Oatmeal and Mr. Vengeance.
Rest in peace, Oatmeal, Mr. Vengeance, the little girl, the little boy, pretty much anybody that died.
And apologies to Natasha Lyonne.
And Natasha Leggero. We got to apologize to both of them for some mistakes we made on a previous episode. And as always, if it's in an artery, don't take it out. And also, ants are psychic. I don't know if you knew that too, but they are.
Excelsior! Excelsior!
Excelsior! Excelsior! Look it up.
And that wraps up another fantastic episode of the Silver Linings Playlist. If you would be so kind, we ask that you leave us some feedback on how we did, plus a like and subscribe. We'll be back next week with another great episode. See ya!